Hi ho, and welcome back. I'm John Stark back at MovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and I'm taking a look at Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the 1937 original, because I just watched the remake, the live action remake Snow White, and I wanted to have the kind of context and clarity. So I actually watched this after having watched live action Snow White instead of before, which I usually try to watch the other thing before. This one I did in reverse, and certainly is interesting. So click like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'm always doing movie reviews. I'm blind, so I talk about audio description. You never know when you might have to suggest that to somebody in the fam, and you're like, hey, did you know there's somebody who's blind and they talk about audio description? It's amazing. It's an amazing story. Hashtag amazing stories. Let me know in the comments what's your favorite classic Disney movie. Let's not do the Renaissance. Pre-Little Mermaid. Favorite pre-Little Mermaid animated Disney movie in the comments and go. So Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I remember having seen this as a kid in one of the many re-releases that they did of these films. That's how I used to catch all the animated Disney films. And, there was Cinderella and Pinocchio and Dumbo, and I just kind of waited for them to all like come back around to their live action things. Snow White was one of the later ones that they'd finally put on VHS. They kind of started with their like lesser titles. I think like Alice in Wonderland was one of their first VHS releases. So Snow White was still getting theatrical releases, even I believe into the 90s. So I'm sure my first time was in theaters, but it was in 1937. One of the things about Snow White is for a long time it was the highest grossing animated feature adjusted for inflation because of, well, all the times it had been re-released, and also when you inflate 1937 money to present day, it's a lot. That's it's a lot of money, man. So yeah, Snow White's made like $1 billion at the box office. And you didn't even realize. And you're just like, oh my God, really? Yeah, that's how popular it was. It was the first animated feature, full-length animated feature. And we thought Walt Disney was crazy at the time to go ahead and make one, but he had been making Disney shorts, and there were theaters that had shown Silly Symphonies sort of back to back to back to back. So it sort of was like feature length. And he was like, people will sit here and watch animation all day long, so why not? And in the beginning, uh, you know, it wasn't, theater was sort of for everybody because it was like a singular experience. It wasn't just like, people weren't just making movies for kids like what they do now. Like we have kids movies and parents take kids to the movies, and it's like a babysitting tool almost. It had to be for everybody. So he had to make a story that was engaging for everybody. And of course it was engaging for everybody. This was the first time it was an animated feature. So adults were able to sit in Snow White and Seven Dwarfs and just sort of be awash in the sort of majesty of all of it, and how something like this could happen for the first time. Uh, I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. I own it on DVD. I know I rewatched it when I got the DVD. It's not one of my favorite Disney films, but it's a film that I respect because you can't not respect it. Uh, I don't know when animation would have popped off if it wasn't for Walt Disney, or if it would have, or if we would still be getting shorts. You know what I'm saying? Like without Snow White, it's sort of, this is like a butterfly effect, a true butterfly effect. There's sort of like that. I think there's kind of a joke behind the idea of a butterfly effect, which is step on a butterfly and who knows what the reverberations will be. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Maybe that butterfly just in 5 minutes was gonna die anyway. you know, you don't know. But if you take Snow White out of the equation and Walt Disney just decides not to do feature animation, I don't, like, what? I then who does? Does anybody? Does anybody take the risk later on? Like, if Walt Disney doesn't do it, then who does? So do we lose all of our animated features? Do we lose Pixar? it's such an interesting thing to think of this one film as like a catalyst. And there are people who are like, well, she's not feminist, and she just wants a prince, and the dwarves are offensive, and it's like, I get all of that, and you don't have to watch the movie. Like, valid. But also, without this movie, the sad thing, there might not be animated features. So any animated feature that you do like and do appreciate for what it is, there's a slight chance that that might not exist without Snow White, if Walt Disney had not decided to make feature animation. So yeah, there has to be a certain reverence around Snow White, whether you like it or not as a film. Uh, do I like it as a film? I watched it again, and it's weird for me to be a 40 something dude sitting there listening to like the Seven Dwarfs. It's my first time with the audio description track. Audio description track does feel like it was made earlier, possibly even might have been on my DVD if I just checked. Because it does sound like an audio description track that could be as much as like 20 years old. It's a little bit one of the older ones. Um, and it complements the film nicely. It's a male voice, and he's reading everything. You got all that heavy text at the beginning because it's that storybook that's opening and reading through. First of all, there's a thanks at the beginning from Walt Disney to all of his animators and creative team for joining him on this insane process of putting together the first full-length animated feature, which again, people thought he was crazy. He didn't even know how to budget it because he couldn't, so he had to keep going back for loans. But luckily, every time he did, he had more product. When he went back to get more money, he had product to show, and people were like, "Oh my God, what is this? What is this wizardry?" Yes, throw money at it. um, so yeah, I mean, it seemed like this marvel at the time. Like, how could somebody do this and do it well? And he pushed for a lot of things that had never been done before and sort of reshaped things in 19... This predates Wizard of Oz. It predates Gone with the Wind. It predates Citizen Kane. I mean, like, there are a couple of classic movies that this thing is still even before that. So we're kind of coming... I mean, we're not in silent film era. I'm not going to say that. There still are silent films, but it's not the era of silent films in 1937. I mean, this is kind of, we're breaking away from that. I don't think we're that far away from Charlie Chaplin Speaks. um, so uh, it's sort of nestled in this beautiful little thing. I think it won like a special Oscar or something like that, like an honorary Oscar for some sort of weird special achievement. Like, they didn't even know what to do with it at the Oscars. They were like, what? Score would have been a nice nomination, because when I was listening to this film, I was like, man, the score is dope. This is a great score. It's a lovely score. It's like the whole movie. It's like sitting there and listening to this classical feast of music. And when you realize it's 1937, it's all real. Like, the whole thing. There are real musicians sitting in a room somewhere, which is one of the things I love about John Williams' scores, is he actually hires musicians and has his own orchestra. And we're going to lose that. So many people just use like computer programs and synthesize things, or they have these reductive scores where it's just like a guitar, you know? Like, we have some of these things that are just so minimalistic that we're going to lose these bombastic orchestral scores to movies, and Snow White has one of those. Do I love all of the music? Nah, really. I have forgotten some of the songs were in here. Um, eh, I mean, Hi Ho and Whistle While You Work are just kind of classics. Someday My Prince Will Come is, uh, I, I don't need it, but it's there. It's fine. It's whatever. It's odd that it's not my favorite song from the movie. It feels like it should be, because it feels like the princess ballads in other movies are the songs, or like the takeaway songs. But I don't think that that's true here. I think Hi Ho or Whistle While You Work is the song that people get, walk away with this film from. Um, and compared to the remake, we fast forward a lot. Like, I actually kind of appreciate, and I'm going to stick with my review, but I appreciate the remake a little bit more for actually fleshing out all that shit that we read at the beginning of the movie in the book. Because that's like the first, I think that's like the first like half hour of the live action remake. So there's a reason to remake the movie, is because we start with her in the woods, picking flowers, and like the huntsman, uh, you know, it's like we're already at that point, and that's like a deep into the live action remake. So we've learned about all the story, and we've actually seen it unfold, and we've had some character introduction. We've gotten to know Snow White more as a person instead of this like uh airheady little girl that's wandering around picking flowers and singing to birds, which is really what she's doing for the first part of the movie. She's 14, by the way. For anybody who's like, Snow White, wow, she's 14 is her age in this movie. So I don't mind the fact that we aged her up a little bit, because it gets even more morbid when you're like, did the queen order the huntsman to cut out the heart of a 14-year-old? She's threatened by a 14-year-old? What is happening? And I love the mirror. And that's always misquoted, by the way. It's not mirror, mirror. It's magic mirror on the wall. But she actually also summons the slave in the mirror, too, which I thought was very 1937 of you, to summon the slave inside of the mirror, before she says magic mirror on the wall. She says some other like, slave in the mirror, come forward to me, bring to me you. She has like some weird thing that she does. It's like, when? Okay. So yeah, we don't really get a lot of establishing time with her. The evil queen is really not in the movie that much. My favorite part with her was, um, again, I kind of like how I'm kind of like going back on some of the things the live action movie does, because live action movie takes her a little bit more organically. It still doesn't really describe where her magic comes from, but the animated version, when she needs to transform into the witch, she goes down into the dungeon and she looks at a book called Disguises. The book is titled Disguises. I was just like, do you have like, are there like volumes of books? And there are like different ones for different things? Or do you only have the Disguises book? Sort of like when they were traveling around with the encyclopedias, and they were like, you have to buy like the alphabet, right? A through Z or whatever. And you only buy the one, but you take the inaugural one, but you don't buy the whole encyclopedia. So your family's like, yeah, we had Encyclopedia Britannica, but we only had the letter M. Because my dad was too cheap to buy the whole thing. So, it's like, do you have more books for more spells? Okay. Anyway, so that's fun. She's a fun lady, the evil queen, but she's also oddly iconic considering how little screen time she's actually in the movie. Meanwhile, back with Snow White. Yes, the huntsman tries to kill her, but then goes, oh no, I can't do it. Run, Snow White, run! And she runs through the woods, and then I realized the wood sequence in this is better than the ones in the live action movie, because it makes more sense. In the live action movie, they make it seem like the trees are coming alive, and that's why I had sort of a question. I was like, I feel like we need to answer these questions. Are the trees alive? Here, the trees are not alive. It's these creatures she's being attacked by, like bats and owls and shit. So like there's a scene that they sort of try to redo where there's like a face on the tree, but the face on the tree is revealed to be an owl in the cartoon, and an actual tree that's alive. But the live action movie is kind of like, no, it's an alive tree. Maybe, I don't know. We're not really going to go into it because this movie was made by 700 different people with 1,000 different ideas all chopped into one. So we're never going to follow up on anything. So that was nice. And she'll get to the dwarves, and man, it takes them a while to get home. she is at the house for, actually, she doesn't even get to the house. It takes her a while to get to the house. And then she gets to the house and then she's there for a while. And the dwarves are off in the mines singing hi ho, and eventually they get home. She's noticed the beds, and that's how she learns their names. Um, and so we don't have the naming sequences not the same. I mean, I like this. I like the 7 beds. She feels like she's Goldilocks going in there to hang out on the beds. It's also weird to think of her as like a 14-year-old girl who wouldn't be very tall anyway at 14, if we're being honest. And then like she's somehow so like cartoonishly larger than the dwarves. So it's almost like, are they dwarves or are they like gnomes? Like, what are we doing here? Because Snow White should be shouldn't be that tall. You know, she should be like a 14-year-old height. So why does she have to like cartoonishly like lay across the beds like long ways? You know, I understand she's not the same. It's there's some things where I'm like, what are we doing here? Because I think about how dwarves have seen the representation, real ones, not these, uh, in this film, and I'm like, I don't even understand if these are. Did they just slap the word dwarf on here because they weren't sure what to do with it? Are these smaller than that? It feels very like we didn't fully think this through. And the hilarity about the dwarves is that they went through like a bajillion different names. So if you Google it, there are so many dumbass names for these dwarfs that they went through, like Burpee and stuff that got cut and they didn't use. So these were the 7 best names that they chose. Um, because they had a hard time trying to figure out how to represent certain personality traits. And so they kept pitching different dwarf ideas and try to figure out, well, what would this dwarf do? What would this dwarf do? So there's like a whole bunch of dwarves. I think that should be a movie. Uh, the dwarves that never were. What happened to the fallen comrades? There used to be more than 7, and now there are only 7. And all what happened to their brethren? Where did they go? Where is Ego Dwarf? So I mean, it's fine. Like the dwarves they're typical, like what you would see cartoonish. Remember, these guys had only made these like silly symphonies up until this point, and like some Mickey Mouse cartoons. So they were used to making things that weren't really serious. So they were trying to build between these sort of cartoonishly, funny side characters and also some sort of narrative structure to Snow White and some like beginning, middle, and end, like a typical feature would have. So they're used to doing this kind of thing with the 7 dwarves, which is why they want to put such a heavy focus on it. I definitely feel like the cartoon has them in it far more than the live action movie does, for obvious reasons. But yeah, the personalities are all represented interestingly, and you can relate to different ones and have the one that you feel like is you, which I feel like a lot of people have. They've turned into merch, most of them grumpy, but I've seen a fair amount of stuff with like Sleepy, and Doc and Dopey. I don't think you see Sneezy or Bashful that much, but yeah, definitely some of the others. So they had some scenes cut because they were in the film too much, so they lost the music in the soup song, and there was a scene where they were building Snow White a bed of her size that got cut. Eventually, the evil queen turns into the witch because she finds out Snow White is not dead and that she was given a heart of a pig, and travels out to Snow White in the forest and has this apple for her. And it's here it makes more sense. Again, the movie didn't really, the live action remake does it kind of clunkily. it's like they're trying to avoid certain things or redo certain things. So in the cartoon, she's making them pies for when they come back because she's trying to be useful at home. And I know it's like a woman's duty is not in the home to clean things, but that's just what she's doing in this movie. It's 1937. So she's making a pie, and then the witch pulls out an apple. She's like, you know what's good for pies? Apples. Which makes way more sense than the live action movie where they try to avoid that and give it feminist power by handing Rachel Ziegler an apple. And she's like, you know, you need this for sustenance. And then she eats it immediately. And I was like, that's not how sustenance works, girl. Mark Webb, hello. Sustenance is for along the way. Everybody knows this. When you pack snacks for a trip, you don't eat them immediately and then go on the trip. We're going on a major hike, so I have to eat all of these protein bars ahead of time that I pack for myself. Step 1, eat all of my food. So while it may be reductive, this makes more sense. And not because like it's where women should be. It's just like it's because she's making pies and the witch is like, oh, I have an apple here for you. Apple pie is good. Yes. Why don't you try it? It just feels better. Like it feels like, okay, so she would have this apple and she might take a bite out of this delicious apple to decide whether or not she wanted it. I don't know. Does she take a bite and then use the rest of the apple? And then you could get into it and be like, well, can you make a pie out of one apple? And especially after you've taken a bite out of it. I'm not saying all of these things work. We're frequently asked to check our brains at the door and make leaps in films, but at least this to me made more sense than the live action version. Sort of. And eventually, then we put Snow White in the glass coffin, which is kind of amazing. Like a glass coffin. They made this glass coffin for Snow White. From where? From what? How? It's kind of impressive when you think about this like thing that we don't talk about or describe how it happened, but she's sort of in this glass coffin. And then the prince who saw her earlier, who is the most undeveloped prince, I think, in all of Disney cinematic history. I can't imagine anybody wants to be Snow White's prince. Like there can't be any boys who are like, my favorite prince is Snow White's prince. He has no depth. And not that I like Jonathan in the live action remake, but there has to be a better character than both of these. This prince he just seems to like apparate when needed. Like he just kind of saw Snow White in the woods one time and immediately like fell for her. It's also sort of uncomfortable because we don't know how old the prince is and she's 14 and it's like, are you being creepy right now? But I can only say it was 1937 for just so many things. Adults and 14-year-olds is not one of those things I can say, well, it was 1937. So, but he's also really underdeveloped, so he could really be any age. Because we know next to nothing about him. He's not really a character. He's more of like an idea. She's like, someday my prince will come, and like a prince comes. You know, she's just there. Oh, okay. Hello, what land are you the prince of? I'm not allowed to have lines or have a character, backstory, or a name. I'm here though, and I will wake you up. So, and then carry you off, and she gets to say bye to all the dwarves, and there's some cute stuff in here. It's not my favorite Disney animated movie, but I respect it because you almost have to. Just sort of like when you think about like all of the benchmark moments in cinema, like you kind of have to at some point. Like, I always hear about the experience everybody had for that first one, where it's just all it was like a train arriving at a station. It's not really like a movie, but it was the first like motion picture that anybody saw in a theater, and they thought the train was going to be coming through the screen. I mean, today that would seem very just sort of like, eh. Did you like the train movie? I don't know, not really. But back then, it was like, oh my God, what is this new medium that we could enjoy outside of the Nickelodeon? Put another nickel in the Nickelodeon. um, so, yeah, and then you have things like the first talkie, which is again, I realized not the best representation of cinema. But there's something about these benchmark moments where it's just like there's still film history there. Do I think Disney has made better? Yes, yes, I do think that they got better at making movies and making better stories with richer characters. Uh, do I think even within Disney's era, sure, I think there are better movies that just have Disney involved in them. I think even when you look at Princess to Princess, I think Cinderella has more of a developed story behind it with more characters to it. So here they're trying something out and they're trying to fix into this new medium. Um, I don't want to take this movie to a desert island, that's for sure. I'm not going to try to claim that it's one of my favorite classic Disney films of all time. This is getting like an A plus. I'm not going to save it and take it with me. It's okay if you don't like it. I think the A plusness of it comes from the daring to ever do this to begin with. When you actually sort of dissect what it is, and then when you see later on more animated features, you go, "Oh, we improved." So then you sort of have to change the grading scale. I don't think it should ever go rotten. I don't think there should be people out there who are like, no, this is a bad movie. We never should have done this, because then it's sort of like, well, then we'd never had animation. So uh, at some point, there's some mid benchmark, but I think we passed it. I don't enjoy it as much. I've seen it a couple times in my life. I'll probably revisit it for its 100th, just simply because we're getting close to being able to revisit films that are 100 and actually have audio description. So within my lifetime, I'll actually get to do that. I'll actually get to say 100 years of Snow White. So in, I don't know, 12 years, I'll watch it again. But probably not before then. I don't see myself watching it again for another 12 years. I just don't. I mean, there are other animated films I'd rather watch. There are other princesses I love more. There are other princes that actually have like a purpose. There are other side characters that are honestly better, that are just that offer more to the story, that are cuter. These are just cartoonish side characters that their personality traits, they're there sort of bridging the gap between silly symphonies and actually having substantial supporting characters that actually do things in movies. Although Disney is sort of famous for having supporting characters that are silly in nature, Timon and Pumbaa, we don't necessarily fix the idea of supporting characters dramatically, but we do have some that are a little bit more meaningful, like we're about to have Jiminy Cricket, who is more of a serious supporting character and not there just for the lulz. But I do love the score. I think it has a beautiful score. The songs are fine, but I mean the actual score, where you can actually hear the instrumentation, that's beautiful. And for its time, this was when they used to have to play the film differently from the music, and a lot of times they were hiring local artists to come and play the score live in theaters, because they didn't actually have the same capability to run picture and sound. They were just coming out of that era. So this was a little bit of a gamble, and I think it pays off. So, Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Before I lose my voice, I'm going to give you a B. I think saying that you're good, not excellent or great, but good is fine. I think to say that this film is good is fine. It's not very long. You don't have to sit with it for very long. The songs aren't terrible. They're perfectly fine to listen to. Uh, it's just, yeah, Disney will top themselves. They'll do better. And, but they'll also do worse. That's the hot take. Is that even for 1937, we will have worse Disney animation than this. And we'll have sort of like, they'll commission worse animation than this. Like Mars Needs Moms. Good God. Anyway, so that's my thought on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Let me know what you think in the comments. What your thoughts are. Like and subscribe, share, notification bell, all the good stuff. And I will see you guys on the other side.